Now, it's not clear when or why, but at a certain point, William's dad decides enough is enough and cuts him off financially. Ooh, that's gonna make him a little upset. So William's like, shit, I need to get a little creative because, he's got an expensive lifestyle to maintain. William wasn't well educated, so he didn't have a ton of options, but this didn't stop him. Because he wasn't necessarily interested in playing life by the rules. So he goes from town to town calling himself an herbal doctor and selling medicine from this big jug that he would carry around with him. He said it just so happened to be the cure for every problem people asked him about. And for the right price, William was also the guy that you would go to for quote unquote abortive herbs, which were herbs that could induce an abortion. Now, because William always made a point to dress in a sharp suit and know exactly the right thing to say, people just believed him. I know I would have. He's in a suit. He must be serious, right? So he was making some cash, being this little doctor. But the problem was his status as a doctor, all of the herbs, his jug of medicine or whatever the fuck, none of it was real. It was all fake. It was just one big giant con. Again, William was uneducated and unemployed, but he wasn't going to let that stop him. He was a confident white man. Hello, a confident white man in a suit. The world was his oyster. Oyster Rockefeller, if you will. Another one of William's ventures was to loan money to local farmers at insanely high interest rates. He would intentionally do this to poor farmers who probably wouldn't be able to make their payments so that he could eventually just take their farmland from them. He knew that they probably weren't gonna pay, and then he could come in and just snatch their land. Yeah, what a shit. And this is when William Rockefeller develops a reputation for being a quote-unquote famous trickster. Or we like to say, con artist. It's worth mentioning that people usually trusted William Rockefeller right away. All thanks to, his extreme efforts to look well-dressed and wealthy, even if he was broke as a joke. William was known to be completely obsessed with his appearance, and leaving people with a good first impression was really important to him. But all his shisty business moves and fake-ass medicine slinging, it starts to catch up with him, which is how he ends up with the nickname Devil Bill. Honestly, kind of a badass name. Devil Bill? Okay. Sounds like a cowboy that I don't want to fuck with. But this Devil Bill was always one step ahead of the haters, okay? Before anyone had time to catch onto his scams or track him down for a refund, he'd be on his way to another town. Kind of like your dad, just poof, gone. In 1834, William moves to Richford, New York. And when you move to a new place or start at a new school and you're like, I'm gonna change things up. I'm gonna be someone different. So you have people, calling you by a different nickname, or maybe you're dressing different. Well, William moved to Richford and started telling people that he was, I'm not lying, he was telling people that he was deaf and dumb, as in, he couldn't speak or even hear. Yeah, that's what he chose. And for a while, everyone in town was writing things out for William on a chalkboard that he carried around his neck. People think that William did this because he had, quote, a desire to hear things which would hardly be talked about before a stranger with good ears, end quote. So basically, pretty much, he liked eavesdropping, okay? Because people would talk in front of him, not knowing that he could actually hear them, and then he would hear what they were saying. I had a lot of Red Bull today. Just let me live. Anyways, that's right. He was a professional eavesdropper. And it's kind of brilliant, honestly. Wow. And bizarrely enough, it really worked out for him in the dating world. I don't know. So one day in 1837, William showed up on the doorstep of some wealthy farmer. And mind you, he has a chalkboard sign around his neck that says, I am deaf and dumb. Yeah, and then he just shows up to people's houses or something. I don't know, but he does, okay? And somehow he still managed to charm the lady that answered the door. It was the farmer's daughter, Eliza Davison. I guess Eliza was quite smitten with him, and she was quoted to say, "I'd marry that man if he wasn't deaf and dumb." Yeah, so, okay, but listen, right? But listen to this, because William, he hears this. He's like, what? She would be into me? So then he decides that he's just gonna drop the whole act on the freaking spot. And he comes clean to Eliza. He's like, yeah, I'm actually not deaf or dumb. And honestly, I was like, yeah, that's a red flag, girl. I don't know about that one. Maybe pass. Shut the door. Go on with your life. But she didn't. That's fine. We all make choices. William drops his whole act, right? Now, many have speculated that maybe he was just tired of like scamming people, right? Or maybe he most likely heard a little rumor that was going around that Eliza's dad, he was gonna like cut her a fat check when she got married. Yeah, she had money coming her way. And William was like, what's that? What? So William decides to drop the whole act, and he decides that he needs to lock down Eliza. He needs to keep that shit around because she has money coming in, right? Girl, what is she? I don't know. If a man came up to you with a sign that says, I am deaf and dumb, and then was like, LOL, JK, you would stay? I don't have anything to follow that with, but okay, good for you. So the two of them go on to wed 2 years later, and then on July 8th, 1839, they have their first baby boy. John D. Rockefeller is born. So John, the baby, right? He was just one of 6 kids that William and Eliza had. Yeah, she pushed a lot out. Now, you'll never believe this after everything I've told you about William, but he wasn't a great father, you know? He would do trust fall exercises with his kids, but at the last second, he would step back and just let them fall flat on their faces. Thanks, Dad. Okay, so this was apparently an exercise that was gonna help like teach the kids how to trust people, but William did it backwards because he stepped away. So the moral of the story was that William was teaching his kids never to trust anyone. Never to trust anyone, not even him. That's pretty brutal. And his wife Eliza must have learned this same lesson because not long after they were married and started having children together, frickin' William started having an affair. Of course he did. So he started having an affair, to make matters worse, with his live-in housekeeper. Her name was Nancy Brown. That's like the whitest name I've ever heard. Nancy Brown. Wow. Okay, so he's having an affair with his housekeeper who lives there. And girl, let me tell you, look, some major information I uncovered about William and this Nancy woman, you are not ready. So Nancy wasn't just the other woman. Oh, nay. Because as it turns out, William had been in love with Nancy before he even married Eliza. I guess he ultimately chose, obviously, to marry Eliza, but mainly because her dad was rich and Nancy, she didn't have anything to her name. So naturally, William has to make a choice, you know, and he went with Eliza. But just a couple of weeks after they had gotten married, you know, getting settled down, whatever, William ends up going to Nancy's house, knocks on her door, and he's asking if she'll move in with the family as like their maid. And I guess she agrees. So their little love affair just kept on going. Even though he had, what's that word? Oh, shit. Oh, wife. He had a wife. Yeah, So while little John, baby John, was growing up, his dad was just screwing the housekeeper like right under the same roof. Now, William and Nancy, they would even have 2 illegitimate children together. And I'm just imagining all of this was maybe a little awkward for Miss Eliza, right? Like, to say the least. What do you do? I think it's safe to say that Eliza really got the shit end of the stick. I mean, shit. She's like, I'm marrying like this nice, sweet, fake deaf man. And then it turns out, you know, he's actually a piece of shit. I wish I could have seen the signs. Sorry, that's actually funny. Because he's wearing a sign? Yeah. It was right there, Eliza. So it's around this time that William decides to kick the whole fake doctor act up a notch. He decides he's going to start living a double life and just take on a completely fake identity.